Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where we are going to, you guessed it, continue to read Homer's Iliad. Or rather, when I say read, what I really mean is fumble over the words. Because that's sort of what I've been doing recently. So, let's get going. Now, front to front, the hostile armies stand, eager of fight, and only wait command. When to the van before the sons of fame, whom Troy sent forth, the beauteous Paris came. In form a god, the panther's speckled hide flowed o'er his armour with uneasy pride. His bended bow across his shoulders flung, his sword beside him negligently hung. Two-pointed spears he shook with gallant grace. He dared the bravest of the Grecian race. As thus with glorious air and proud disdain, he boldly stalked the foremost on the plain. Him Menelaus, loved of Mars, espies, with heart elated and with joyful eyes. So joys a lion if the branching deer, or mountain goat his bulky prize appear. Eager he seizes and devours the slain, pressed by bold youths and baying dogs in vain. Thus fond of vengeance with a furious bound, in clanging arms he leaps upon the ground. From his high chariot him approaching near, the beauteous champion views with marks of fear. Smit with a conscious sense, retires behind, and shuns the fate he well deserved to find. As when some shepherd from the rustling trees, 110, shot forth to view a scaly serpent sees. Trembling and pale he starts with wild affright, and all confused precipitates his flight. So from the king the shining warrior flies, and plunged amid the thickest Trojan lies. As godlike Hector sees the prince retreat, he thus upbraids him with a generous heat. Unhappy Paris, but to women brave, 111, so fairly formed and only to deceive. O hadst thou died when first thou saw'st the light, or died at least before thy nuptial rite, a better fate than vainly thus to boast, and fly the scandal of thy Trojan host. Gods, how the scornful Greeks exult to see their fears of danger undeceived in thee. Thy figure promised with a martial air, but ill thy soul supplies a form so fair. In former days, in all thy gallant pride, when thy tall ships triumphant stemmed the tide, when Greece beheld thy painted canvas flow, and crowds stood wondering at the passing show, say, was it thus, with such a baffled mien, you met the approaches of the Spartan queen? Thus from her realm conveyed the beauteous prize, and both her warlike lords outshined in Helen's eyes. This deed thy foes' delight, thy own disgrace, thy father's grief, and ruin of thy race. This deed recalls thee to the proffered fight, or hast thou injured whom thou darest not right? Soon to thy cost the field would make thee know, thou keep'st the consort of a braver foe. Thy graceful form instilling soft desire, thy curling tresses and thy silver lyre. Beauty and youth in vain to these you trust, when youth and beauty shall be laid in dust. Troy yet may wake, and one avenging blow crush the dire author of his country's woe. His silence here with blushes Paris breaks. 'Tis just, my brother, what your anger speaks. But who like thee can boast a soul sedate, so firmly proof to all the shocks of fate? Thy force like steel a tempered hardness shows, still edged to wound and still untired with blows. Like steel uplifted by some strenuous swain, with falling woods to strew the wasted plain. Thy gifts I praise, nor thou despise the charms with which a lover golden Venus arms. Soft-moving speech and pleasing outward show, no wish can gain them, but the gods bestow. Yet wouldst thou have the proffered combat stand, the Greeks and Trojans seat on either hand. Then let a midway space our hosts divide, and on that stage of war the cause be tried. By Paris there the Spartan king be fought, for beauteous Helen and the wealth she brought. And who his rival can in arms subdue, his be the fair, and his the treasure too. Thus with a lasting league your toils may cease, and Troy possess her fertile fields in peace. Thus may the Greeks review their native shore, much famed for generous steeds, for beauty more. He said, the challenge Hector heard with joy, then with his spear restrained the youth of Troy. Held by the midst, athwart and near the foe, advanced with steps majestically slow, while round his dauntless head the Grecians pour their stones and arrows in a mingled shower. Then thus the monarch great Atrides cried, Forbear, ye warriors, lay the darts aside. A parley Hector asks, a message bears, we know him by the various plume he wears. Awed by his high command the Greeks attend, the tumult silence, and the fight suspend. While from the centre Hector rolls his eyes on either host, and thus to both applies. Hear, all ye Trojan, all ye Grecian bands, what Paris, author of the war, demands. Your shining swords within the sheath restrain, and pitch your lances in the yielding plain. Here in the midst, in either army's sight, he dares the Spartan king to single fight, and wills that Helen and the ravished spoil, that caused the contest, shall reward the toil. Let these brave triumphant victor grace, and different nations part in leagues of peace. He spoke in still suspense on either side. Each army stood, the Spartan chief replied. Me too, ye warriors, hear whose fatal right a world engages in the toils of fight. To me the labour of the field resign, me Paris injured, all the war be mine. Fall he that must beneath his rival's arms, and live the rest secure of future harms. 2 lambs devoted by your country's right, to earth a sable, to the sun a white. Prepare, ye Trojans, while a third we bring, select to Jove, the inviolable king. Let reverend Priam in the truce engage, and add the sanction of considerate age. His sons are faithless, headlong in debate, and youth itself an empty wavering state. Cool age advances, venerably wise, turns on all hands its deep discerning eyes, sees what befell and what may yet befall, concludes from both, and best provides for all. The nations here with rising hopes possessed, and peaceful prospects dawn in every breast. Within the lines they drew their steeds around, and from their chariots issued on the ground. Next, all unbuckling the rich mail they wore, laid their bright arms along the sable shore. On either side the meeting hosts are seen, with lances fixed and close the space between. 2 heralds now dispatched to Troy invite the Phrygian monarch to the peaceful rite. Talthybius hastens to the fleet to bring the lamb. Talthybius hastens to the fleet to bring the lamb for Jove, the inviolable king. Well, and with that, we're going to end the episode there, because otherwise this could keep going for a little bit longer, just because I don't know how long the next paragraph is going to be. But either way, it will take us over the end of the episode. So, with that said, we are kind of making some progress. Eventually, I am going to break off and have a little bit of a, break from this, in order to attempt to acquire the final gem, the green one from the waterfall, which I'll do partway through this, just because I will need a break in between. So, other than that, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.